Number 12, keel hauling. Ever wonder how sailors punished each other back in the day? Before HR departments and maritime law, allow me to introduce keel hauling, basically the nautical version of dragging someone face first across gravel, but wetter and with more barnacles. Keel hauling involved tying a sailor with ropes, usually around their torso and legs, and dragging them under the ship's hull from one side to the other. Sounds survivable? Think again. Old ships weren't smooth fiberglass boats, they were crusty, splintery death traps covered in razor-sharp barnacles, sea slime, and God knows what else. So being hauled under one meant shredding your body against underwater knives, all while holding your breath. Some victims drowned, others bled out. If you survived, congrats, you now had the medieval equivalent of full-body rug burn, only with salt water and tetanus. And yes, this was an official punishment in navies like the Dutch and British, not just bar fight vengeance, it was formal, documented, salty. So next time someone says they'd love to live at sea, maybe show them this first. You'll either crush a dream or create a pirate. Number 11, boiling to death. We've all made the joke, it's so hot I'm boiling alive, but in the 1500s, that wasn't a punchline, it was policy. Boiling someone to death was exactly what it sounds like. The condemned would be placed, sometimes lowered slowly, into a large cauldron of water, oil, tar, or even molten lead. The liquid was then brought to a boil, turning the person into a very unfortunate soup. And unlike burning at the stake, which could go relatively fast depending on the wind, boiling was a slow, scream-filled horror show. Your skin would blister and slough off before your internal organs even started to fail. But the real selling point, it was visually impressive. Bubbling liquid, rising steam, a human flailing in agony. It was theatrical torture with built-in sound effects. King Henry VIII reportedly made boiling a legal punishment for poisoners. You know, because they had killed people in sneaky, cowardly ways. So naturally, the solution was a large metal pot and some firewood. Honestly, if the History of Punishment had a cooking channel, this would be their viral content. Number 10, the pear of anguish. Let's say you've invented a fruit-shaped object, but instead of feeding people, it's designed to be shoved into orifices and cranked open from the inside. Congratulations, you've made the pear of anguish a medieval torture device so messed up. Even the name sounds sarcastic. The pear of anguish was typically made of metal, shaped like a pear naturally, with petal-like leaves that opened outward when you turned a screw. The device came in different sizes and was inserted into the victim's mouth, rectum, or ahem, other places depending on the crime, heretic's mouth, liar's mouth, immoral women guess where. Once in, the torturer would slowly twist the screw, forcing the pear to open wide, tearing tissue and destroying everything in its path. There's no delicate way to put this, it was destruction from inside out, invented solely to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. And here's the kicker, it was rarely meant to kill, just maim, silence, and remind you and everyone watching that the people in charge had very creative rage issues. Historians debate how often this thing was actually used, but the fact that it even existed is already too much. Somewhere, someone forged metal petals and thought, yeah, this'll teach them. So if you ever feel like medieval justice had no chill, you're absolutely right. Number 9, crocodile shears. Just when you thought we were done inventing new ways to hate everything, allow me to introduce crocodile shears. This was a favorite of 16th century Europe and was reserved for one very specific type of victim people who attempted to assassinate royalty. In other words, traitors to the crown, because clearly you needed a themed torture device to match the political vibes. Crocodile shears were long iron tongs, shaped kind of like oversized scissors but with nasty teeth on the inside. These were heated until red hot and then used to grip and rip off certain important body parts. And by certain, I mean one very specific, very male body part. It was slow, it was grotesque, it was symbolic. Basically, a final way to say, you tried to dethrone the king, say goodbye to your own crown, pal. The punishment wasn't even designed to kill, immediately it was to mutilate, shame, and then execute. The whole process was theatrical, like a twisted Oscars ceremony with fire and iron. And you thought modern politics were brutal. Number 8, breaking on the wheel. You ever overpack a suitcase and sit on it to crush everything into place? Now imagine you're the suitcase. That's basically what breaking on the wheel was like. Here's how it worked. A large wooden wheel like a wagon wheel on steroids was used as a human xylophone of pain. The victim would be tied across it or laid beneath it, and executioners would use heavy iron bars to methodically break their bones, not just once, systematically, limb by limb, section by section, crushing bones but trying to avoid major arteries so that, yep, you'd stay alive through most of it. Afterward, the shattered body would often be woven through the spokes of the wheel like some gruesome craft project and left out in public to slowly die or be eaten by birds. A literal, don't mess with us billboard made of person. Why the wheel? Because it was symbolic, circular, eternal punishment. Also, it made for a great public spectacle. You know, back when weekend entertainment involved popcorn and deeply traumatic executions. They even had grades of wheel punishment. If the court was feeling merciful, they'd start with a fatal blow to the chest or neck. If not, enjoy the full body crunch. So yeah, medieval justice wasn't just brutal, it was decorative. Number 7. Sawing in half the wrong way. If you ever assumed being sawed in half was just a magician's trick gone theatrical, oh boy, history would like a word. Sawing people in half was, tragically, very real, and not only real, it was done the most inefficient way possible. Not horizontally like in a cheesy stage show, no. The preferred medieval method, vertically, from the groin down. Yup, they'd hang you upside down by your feet sometimes, just high enough to keep blood flowing to your brain, you know, to keep you conscious, and then start slicing from between your legs downward with a big old saw. Slowly. Because why not stretch out the horror for maximum psychological effect? Why upside down? Because gravity helped slow blood loss at first, which meant the victim stayed alive longer during the sawing. Truly, they thought of everything except therapy. This method was used in various parts of the world, but it had a special cameo in Europe during the Inquisition, and in some cases, it wasn't even about what you did, it was about what you believed. So yes, you could be punished for having the wrong thoughts and the wrong leg to torso ratio. Honestly, the next time someone complains that punishment today is too soft, just show them this. That should shut them up real fast. Number 6. Flaying alive. This one's not metaphorical, it's exactly what it sounds like. Flaying is the act of removing a person's skin while they're still alive, you know, like peeling a human potato. Used by various cultures throughout history, including the Assyrians and certain medieval sadists, flaying was a punishment meant to send a very clear message: don't mess with us, or you'll become a leather project. Victims were stripped naked and restrained, and then the executioner would begin the slow process of slicing away the skin. Depending on the skill or sadism of the flayer, people could survive this for hours. Sometimes they were flayed partially and left alive as a warning. Other times, their flayed skins were displayed publicly like a grotesque scroll of vengeance. And here's the part that really ices the cake of horror in some societies. Flaying wasn't just for enemies of the state, it was used for religious or political heretics. You didn't just die in pain, you died symbolically. Your body turned into a statement piece. So if you've ever burned yourself on a curling iron and screamed, imagine that, but as your whole deal. Yup, humanity's creativity knew no chill. Number 5. Rat torture. Let's say you're an ancient interrogator. You've got a prisoner who won't talk. You've tried yelling, chains, maybe even waterboarding ancient edition. Nothing works. What now? Rat. You use rat. Rat torture was simple, effective, and deeply horrifying. You take a live rat, place it on the victim's bare stomach or chest, and cover it with a metal container like a bowl or a bucket. Then you'd heat the container from the outside, usually with hot coals or fire. What does the rat do? Try to escape. The only way out downward, into the person's body. The rat, in full panic mode, would start gnawing, burrowing, and clawing through the softest exit available. Spoiler, that's you. This method was used in various parts of the world and even made a charming cameo in history's darkest corners, from ancient empires to more modern tyrannies. It wasn't just torture, it was psychological warfare. Even the threat of it was usually enough to break someone's mind. So yeah, if you thought rats were already nightmare fuel, add living tunnel drill to their resume. Suddenly Mickey Mouse seems a lot less charming, huh? Number 4. The Judas Cradle. You ever sit on something uncomfortable and think, wow, this chair is torture? Well, medieval Europe took that idea literally and made it real. Introducing the Judas Cradle, a torture device so horrifyingly specific, it sounds like something from an off-brand Hellraiser IKEA, Picture a sharp, pyramid-shaped seat. Now picture being lowered onto it, slowly, with the pointy end aimed directly at your most sensitive anatomy. Yes, exactly there. The idea wasn't to impale you all at once because that would be merciful. No, you'd be gradually lowered by ropes, forcing your body weight down onto the spike over hours or even days. Bonus points if the torturers decided to jiggle you around for fun. It was humiliation, physical pain, and infection, all rolled into one really bad time. And, like many medieval punishments, cleanliness was not a priority. The device was rarely cleaned between victims, which meant infection was practically guaranteed. You didn't just get tortured, you also got a bonus round of sepsis. Why did this happen? Well, like so many instruments of creative pain, it was designed to extract confessions, because clearly, nothing says I trust this legal system like confessing under the threat of being slowly turned into a human kebab. So next time you complain about your office chair, just remember, at least it doesn't come with a pyramid of doom. Number 3, scaphism, the boat torture. You ever feel like you're having a slow, miserable day that just won't end? Ancient Persia turned that vibe into a punishment. Scaphism, also delightfully known as the boats, was a method of execution that combined drowning, starvation, insects, and psychological torture into one nightmarish smoothie. Here's the recipe. Take your victim, strip them naked, and place them between two hollowed-out boats or large logs like a human panini. Then, feed them a mix of milk and honey until they get, digestive problems. Smear more honey on their exposed skin to attract insects, then just leave them, floating in a stagnant pond under the hot sun. The result, a living buffet for flies, maggots, and whatever else crawls by. The victim wouldn't die quickly. It took days, sometimes weeks, as their body slowly became an open-air ecosystem of misery. They were basically turned into a biohazardous charcuterie board. Why go to all this effort? Because the Persians wanted to make a point. Scaphism wasn't just about death, it was about humiliation, spectacle, and making sure everyone knew don't mess with the empire, or we'll feed you to the ants. It was torture with a side of pest control. Number 2, Lynching death by 1,000 cuts. Imagine being punished so thoroughly that your suffering was the main attraction, not your death. Welcome to lynching, a Chinese execution method that basically said, why stop at killing someone once when you can do it, in chapters. Lynching, also known as death by 1,000 cuts, was used for especially heinous crimes like treason or killing your boss, neither of which I recommend. The condemned would be tied to a post and sliced, not stabbed, sliced, little by little, over and over, until they either died from blood loss, shock, or sheer existential despair. Now, here's the twisted part. The executioner's goal wasn't to kill you quickly. It was to keep you alive for as long as possible to maximize both physical pain and social shame. In fact, sometimes victims were drugged to stay conscious longer, because nothing says justice like forced awareness of your own slow disassembly. Oh, and bonus horror. This wasn't just a private punishment. Crowds would gather, families could be forced to watch, and afterward, your body was sometimes denied proper burial because mutilation in death meant spiritual punishment in the afterlife too. So yeah, the next time you get a paper cut and wince like it's the end of the world, remember some people were sentenced to death by metaphorical paper cuts, but with actual knives, thousands of them. Number 1, the brazen bull. Imagine inventing a musical instrument that only plays screams. Congratulations, you're now the ancient Greeks. The brazen bull was a solid metal sculpture shaped like, well, a bull. Seems classy. Right, until you realize it was also a torture device. Here's how it worked. Someone would be locked inside the hollow metal bull, and a fire would be lit beneath it. As the metal heated up, so did the person inside. You get where this is going. And because that wasn't disturbing enough, the bull's head was designed with special tubes to amplify the screaming and convert it into trumpet-like bull noises. Yes, someone looked at human suffering and thought, you know what this needs? Acoustics. According to legend, the inventor of this fiery bovine karaoke machine, a guy named Perilos, proudly showed it off to the tyrant Phalaris of Acragas. Phalaris was impressed and immediately had Perilos tossed in for a test run. Talk about user feedback. So if you ever think you're having a rough day at work, just remember, at least your performance review didn't involve involuntary participation in your own invention. Basically, The Brazen Bull was ancient cruelty's attempt at performance art, a TED Talk in hell. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.